Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the GuidanceCast, where we have a very, very interesting topic on Islamic finance in the modern world. We have two amazing guests with us. We've got Sheikh Wasim and brother Aziz Deen, who has come all the way from London. So thank you very, very much for attending this podcast, which I appreciate was very last minute. Quick introductions. Shall we start with our beloved Sheikh Wasim? I'm sure a lot of the viewers will know him, but some of the viewers that won't know him from Aziz's background and viewers. Sheikh, would you like to give a quick introduction on yourself?
Yeah, my name is Wasim Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Thank you for having me today. Looking forward to the discussion. I'm originally from Yorkshire, live in Manchester now. I have studied the Islamic sciences, particularly 7 years in Syria. And I'm currently resident and teaching here at Guidance Hub, as Islamic community organization, and we do various classes on Islamic studies, but also community work such as sports and children's activities, women's activities, well-being and that kind of stuff. And I'm just one of the team, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, amazing. And Aziz, would you like to give a quick introduction on yourself?
I would. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a real pleasure to be here. It really is. You're doing great work here, and it's good to see such a very productive bunch of brothers here in Manchester. So my name is Aziz Deen. I am a lawyer based in Bristol, and I specialize in Islamic finance. To date, I've probably done 500 million pounds worth of Islamic finance deals, commercial properties, houses for the rich and famous, all sorts. So hopefully I can talk a little bit to you about how it's like in practice. The Sheikh here, he can talk about fiqh, jurisprudence, he can talk about the meanings behind structures, but how they're put into practice. I think that's a gap in the knowledge bank that I can fill and show you what people are doing, and potentially how people in this day and age, as Muslims operating in the UK, can be more Islamic Sharia compliant in their own daily affairs. With just a bit of reality in there. You've got the fiqh perspective, the Islamic perspective, but also the practical. People need to see that Islamic finance is 100% practical. It's achievable. It's not just something created by the mullahs and the muftis and the imams to befuddle and befrangle us. It's not that at all.
Alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have two different angles on this topic. So let's get into it. Sheikh, I want to just start up from the basics, really. Why we have Islamic finance in the first place is purely because of the current world we live in. Is run based on a riba-based system, financial system. So I think we should start off with, it's a big question. What are the current problems as Muslims that we face living in today's financial system?
Alhamdulillah, just to mention that why we have laws in the first place, right? Laws in any country, any system, Islam in particular, is to regulate society, to have a sense of justice, fairness, no wrongs are done. That's what we aim through law. That's the purpose of law, and I'm sure Aziz could talk more about the law perspective. And so Islamic finance is not there to make life difficult for us. It's there to make life better for everybody. It's not about the individual, it's about society and the community. So yes, we have certain challenges today living in the Western Hemisphere and the finance systems that I'm sure Aziz can tell us more about. But I just want to mention the general principle, and that is that the laws of Islam were there to protect our wealth, for us to, invest in a healthy way, in a fair way. So this is why riba is prohibited, because, and you, Aziz, will have seen the dangers and the sort of problems of riba, which is usury. But it really is just a ruthless system that makes the rich richer and the poor poorer, and really, strangles those in, compromising situations who need some way out. Like even now, the house crisis or the house, how do you get a house now? And the big question of mortgages, and even the people who are not Islamic or not Muslims, they are struggling with the whole concept of mortgages, and they're trying to find alternatives. It's so difficult out there. So, and this is all based off this, usury and interest that you're referring to. Yeah.
A lot of people focus a lot on riba. They focus a lot on that element of Islamic finance, but they forget two very important elements. One, Islamic finance does prohibit, Islamic law does prohibit usury, riba, which is unjust enrichment. The riba could be among many different types. It wouldn't just be interest alone. It could be riba in a transaction of this unjust enrichment. So that's just one point to make clear. And there's two others that I think Muslims need to be aware of. The first one is ghara, uncertainty, taking a gamble. That's not something that it's part of Islam. If it's something 50-50, we're encouraged, we're told not to do it. That would be a non-compliant transaction. If I buy a car unseen from an auction, that would be ghara. There'd be uncertainty there as to what the product is. And the other one would be maysir, which is speculation, which is to buy a car at auction, for example, and to speculate that it might go up in value in 2 months' time because of a shortage of something. It's kind of like a gamble with very limited information. If I had, for example, sufficient information to make that decision, then it would be compliant. But if I'm just taking risks here and there, gharar and maysir would come in. They would come into the picture, right? So it is debt. But also, as Sheikh said, I really like what you said, Sheikh. You said, do no harm, or a rule that we shouldn't impact the society negatively. Islam and Islamic finance has a principle within it called the no harm rule, the no harm principle. All of our investments need to be checked against what harm they're doing, even to the extent of environmental damage. Now, a lot of people talk about this theme. It's called ESG, environmental social governance, and it's really big in investing. You may have come across it, but actually I would argue that Islamic finance from day one was ESG. It was compliant.
Yeah.
So, how long has Islamic finance been around? Is it 50 years? I think I've read somewhere. Is that true?
In the UK, Islamic finance has been around since circa 1960, but Islamic finance itself has been around since the day the Prophet ﷺ received his religion from his God. Because really, on that day, the Rasulullah he embodied everything that was that a great businessman should have: fairness, equality. We forget that Rasulullah he was also known by Al-Amin, the trustworthy. And pre-Islam, he was known for that. You know, pre-Islam, he was fair in his dealings. He embodied Islamic finance way before Islam was even revealed to him. MashaAllah.
Yes, and the example of that you just mentioned was that even his enemies who had pawned items with him and or given him their trusts to him to save, and he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a trustworthy person, and that's the thing, that finance has always been there, and Islamic finance has always been there from the time of revelation, like as he said. But I think that you mentioned a really important point of this equity or fairness, and that's a big concern for me. And I know a lot of brothers they talk about this, that we don't want to invest in companies or just on the stock market or just through a broker, because we don't know where they're investing the money. Is it in a company with alcohol? Is it in a company with arms? Is it like some kind of testing on animals? Like, how do we know where our money is being used?
Here's a solution. Due diligence. So the Sheikh correctly mentioned people in our community are wrongly put off of investing in the stock market and in things that will benefit them. As Muslims, we should actually favor equity risk, so stock market, rather than money in a bank account, because Muslims believe that money has no real wealth. It's a means to measure wealth, but within it, it's not doing anything. We have zakat to get money in the system circulating. Otherwise, people would just hoard it and sit on it for years and years and years, and no one would benefit. So as Muslims, we're encouraged to invest. We're encouraged to take risks. But the main thing, Sheikh, like you said, is to assess that risk. It has to be a reasonable risk. Due diligence is very, very, very important. So you're right. If you look at a company, the first thing to do is, firstly, before you put a single penny in the market, is to understand what is this company doing. Is it selling pork? Is it selling revealing clothing? Is it doing anything you're not happy with? If it is, discount it, get rid of it. Then if it's compliant, move to the next stage. Is it heavily in debt? What is the debt position? Because debt is not allowed in Islam. Riba, finance, conventional finance isn't allowed. The scholars have come up with mechanics and certain thresholds. 33% is the debt ratio I use. And then you've gone to the second stage.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you explain this debt element a bit more for our viewers? Because I'm not following the debt element.
Right. Okay. So
please.
No. Yeah. I think you're right.
So a company's working off debt is what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'll clarify, because for me it's very normal to speak in financial terms. So I need to kind of make it applicable. So
a share of the company.
So let's say I bought a Tesla share. This is hypothetical. I don't know what Tesla's real figures are, but let's say I bought one Tesla share and I'm making a decision whether to buy it. Before, this is pre-purchase. Tesla as a company needs to be Sharia compliant. So Tesla can't have too much debt, because otherwise it's the same as me taking on that debt, right? Because I'm investing, I will become a shareholder in that company. I will have an ownership share. And if the company's haram, then I'm haram. My money's haram. My profit that I receive from it will have to be purified and given away. So I have to check to make sure it's halal. So the first thing I check is debt. Have they taken on haram debt?
Yeah.
Usually, yes, all companies do. But is that debt above 33%? And the reason why scholars have said 33% is okay is because I think the Rasulullah Sallallahu, he said that a little bit of bad is acceptable. And I think that's the hadith. There's a very, very detailed hadith. I haven't
Yeah,
looked at the
the principle generally amongst the Islamic jurists
Yeah.
is as long as it's not the majority of
Yeah.
the wealth, and it's some things there, nothing's absolutely pure and 100% clean. It's very hard to get that. It can be, but
Yeah.
it's very difficult. So to remove that, what they call haraj, this
Yeah.
like constraint and difficulty, there's a leeway, let's say.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, there's different opinions, but 33% is probably the kind of standard, I think. Yeah.
33% is a standard for
Yeah.
riba, but for example, if it was a company selling alcohol or pork, then that threshold goes down
Yeah.
to 5% according to the scholars, because that is considered very, very bad, especially the alcohol and the gambling element. That you shouldn't have it at all. That 5% is only there to cover businesses like hotels that may have,
Yeah.
or for example, Muslim businesses have been purchasing big supermarkets. I don't know if you've come across stores that are now owned by Muslims.
Yeah.
Asda would be an example of that.
Yep.
Now, how would they buy that store and serve millions of customers and grow their wealth?
When they've got alcohol
When
and
they've got
pork and
alcohol.
haram food there.
So people
Yeah.
are probably wondering, how are these
Yeah.
Muslims doing that? Well, that's why. They probably are using a turnover calculation.
Mhm.
How much money is coming in? Is 5% of the money linked to alcohol? If not, then it's halal. Well, it's considered halal by some scholars.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my main thing is, don't worry, don't panic about hearing things like stock, shares, risk, that you just have to learn. And this is why Guidance Hub is important, because knowledge, our community is massively disadvantaged. Economically, we are in the gutter. Other communities are doing so well, the Jewish community, the Hindu community, all communities are doing so well. And where are we going wrong? We've got an issue, is firstly, it's probably a class issue, where we've just emigrated to this country in some cases. A lot of the refugees are probably from a Muslim background. But most important way to solve this issue is education. And actually, it's our haq, our responsibility as educated people to pass on that knowledge. That's why I came here from all the way across, so it's to speak to you about these things.
Just because I brought that on because we were talking about investing,
Mm.
and I think not enough of us think about how can we grow our wealth in a halal way, and we need to further educate ourselves on the Islamic finance system so we can demystify any concerns that we might have. So just to bring it to a practical point of view for the
Yeah.
viewers, in terms of how can they apply Islamic finance to some of their daily lives or some of their financial decision making, such as whether it's buying a car, so for car finance, or acquiring a property for their main residence. So let's kick off that.
Just before we do, I just want to mention on that very point that Islam is from the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran, and the Sahaba, because they were the first community who lived this religion. And we should realize, and on the point that Aziz is mentioning, that many Muslims were wealthy, extremely wealthy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't wealthy in a greedy sense or in a worldly sense. It was the fact that they had this knack of entrepreneurship or business-minded people. They could make good deals. A lot of the stuff at that time was more trade-based, right? Which it still is, to be honest. The money is probably still in trading and merchandise or commodities, right? Different types today from then, but similar principle. So I think we need to remind ourselves that it's not wrong to make money. It's not wrong to be rich. It's not wrong to be wealthy. Because sometimes people look down on wealthy people, or he's snobby, or they posh, and they not like Islamic. But some of the most pious people were wealthy, and maybe today some of the most wealthiest people, were pious, and some of the most wealthiest people today would be pious as well. So we shouldn't see wealth as a negative thing, if you like, right? And I think that's what you're trying to say here.
No, absolutely. I think it just comes down to our intention.
Intention, indeed, yeah.
That's fundamental.
The Sheikh and I were discussing waqf earlier, and I wanted to bring this in before we forget about it, because the waqf model shows how important it is for Muslims to be wealthy. I was telling Sheikh about Uthman bin Affan, may Allah be pleased with him, a Sahaba, who donated a plot of land to a waqf, which is a endowment, a charitable endowment. He had a piece of property and he gave it up, and any income generated from that would be used to benefit the poor. People forget that over time, these things, they increase in value. So all the rent that they received, they reinvested it. Some was given to the poor to kind of fund charitable endowments and charitable things. But that has grown to the extent where if you go to Masjid al-Nabawi, you look straight in front of you from, I think it's gate 26, you will see a hotel, and that hotel is called, I think it's called Uthman bin Affan Waqf or something like that. It's really simple. It was built for, it's currently generating turnover well above 50 million. So this is a huge hotel, a very good quality hotel, and that is 100% Waqf. It's 100% charitable. The second point I wanted to mention is you asked about practicalities. What is the first things Muslims can do to be practical in their finances in accordance with the rules of Sharia? Do they have an Islamic Sharia compliant savings account? Now these accounts now, with, for example, I could mention many banks. Gatehouse was one of them. QIB is another one. They're offering rates of around 6%, 5%, 4%. For cash. Now, instead of having your money in a haram savings account with Lloyds, why would you not move it to a Sharia compliant one, which uses a wakala model, so the bank is entrusted as agent for your money? And the main thing is, it's different to a normal conventional bank account, because if the bank lost the money, you wouldn't be able to get it back. Whereas in conventional banking, there is certainty and guarantee. And Sheikh, you can talk about, actually, in Islam, there is no permissibility on guaranteed income.
That's right. Yes. Where the riba concept would come in.
Correct.
Where, I give the money, I guarantee a return for myself, and you take all the risk. That's completely haram, and hence why this conventional system where people think it's safe to put their money in because of the guarantee. That's not Islamic at all. That's actually against the principles. And I agree with you. I think that, like you mentioned before, the concept of zakat, like if you got your wealth sitting there and it's not doing anything, then zakat eats away at it. You got to pay zakat every year, and you just, wealth is going down. So the idea is to invest in something, to use it in something. And waqf is a brilliant thing, but waqf requires a large amount of money. And the interesting thing is there's so much waqf in the Muslim world.
There is.
So what does that mean? The Muslims were earning lots of money, but investing it in their akhirah as well.
Yeah,
so it wasn't just about the dunya, like let's have a good life and, even look after poor people and stuff. It was actually, when I've gone, I want to leave a legacy behind that's continuous. And so Sayyidina Uthman left us 1400 years ago. Sayyidina Umar has waqf in Makkah as well. It's called Jabal Umar. He gave a section there to waqf. The Prophet told him, look, in the Arabic it's like, give sadaqah of the benefit, but keep the original. So the land is yours, but any benefit taken from it is the sadaqah, is the charity, which is what an endowment is. So it doesn't belong to anybody anymore. It's looked after by the ministry, trustees. The Ministry of Endowments usually is a body in most Muslim countries, the Wazarat al-Awqaf, and so they look after it and they appoint people, and obviously over time people come and go. But it's a beautiful system that has empowered us, because mosques were looked after, poor people looked after, universities were funded. I even came across a waqf that helped people get married. If you're getting married, you could go apply for a fund, and it was just given to you. And you had your nikah, you took your nikah certificate, you got married a week ago, here's a startup for your marriage, 10k for the couple, amazing things.
And from a practical perspective, Sheikh, you said that waqfs are, you need a lot of capital to start them. That is correct. Usually you need a lot of capital to start a waqf fund. But now Wahid have come out with this product, it's iWills, and I would never promote organizations on a podcast or a talk, but this has some real benefit. It allows the public to get a waqf, to start their waqf fund. What would happen is you would give Wahid, for example, £100, 100% waqf, and then that would grow in a fund, and it would increase the amount of charitable endowment that's there. So you can do it, it's possible, but only, this is like 3 months ago they launched it. So my point is, that's where we are now. We need to develop and become even more sophisticated as investors to progress Islamic finance in every aspect.
I think we live in a society where we all know where the house prices are increasing substantially, and it's just getting harder and harder, to actually acquire property.
It is.
And I know, look, I'm 26 years old. I know the current stresses of the younger generation is, how can we afford to buy property? So just on the topic of investing and the different investment strategies, I think it'd be worth talking about, for those that are in their 20s, if it's getting harder, if the property price is increasing, how can we grow our wealth?
Yeah.
So from a young age, we start working. How can we start allocating our savings into certain investment strategies, so then we can increase our chances of buying a property when we get to that stage of marriage? So what are the different what options do we have out there that we can deploy our capital into that can provide that wealth creation, essentially?
So just before you touch on that, I just want to mention a point off the back of that. I think it's important. totally agree with everything you said. Just want to add that as Muslims, we need to become more frugal in the way we spend. We are excessive. Excess is not good. Islam talks against israf, right? Innal musrifina ikhwanu shayateen. Those who are extravagant and spend crazily on stuff, they're the brothers of shaitan, Allah says. So it's a very bad thing. Yeah, it's a very bad thing to just be excessive. And I think that doesn't help us to build wealth, to purchase homes or invest in the future, and maybe do the things that Aziz may suggest in his what he's going to say in a moment. So I think that's something really, as Muslims, when we look back, even the wealthiest people, there's a fine balance. We're not talking about being stingy or kind of tight-fisted or something like this. Be generous, be kind, but not on things that are worthless. We could talk about hiring cars that are this or this, that, the other, and people do throw 10, 20k at weddings that they don't need to. Okay, they can afford it, whatever, right? But some people can't afford it as well, and they want to keep up with the neighbors and kind of trends, and they end up spending money which may have been the house deposit, and now all of a sudden a wedding's come. Well, why would you need to spend all of that money on? So I just wanted to mention that point there, that you said earlier, I said earlier that it takes a lot of wealth, but I do think we have a lot of wealth. I do think we can pool together. I think Muslims have, and you've probably witnessed that, this growing. Yeah. So I think we have. It's just I think maybe we're not educated enough, as you said earlier. So Bismillah, what could we do to help us build wealth?
Start with the akhirah focus as well, because this is what Muslims should do. We should think about what are we doing for our akhirah. So I think to grow wealthy, invest in your akhirah. Give regular sadaqah, set up a regular donation so that Allah may be pleased with you. The most important thing to remember is the money you make in your account is not from your employer. It's from Allah. It's part of your rizq. And if your Allah is happy with you, will He not bestow His favors upon you? If you submit to a king, would that king not reward you? And we are submitting to the King of Kings. Would He not reward us with all of the best things in this life? Everything, alhamdulillah, that I have, I try to ask Allah specifically for it. So, for example, if I want say specifically, oh Allah, give me this specific thing, and you'll find that when you do pure submission, you will receive that thing, inshallah. Talking more practically, I think a lot of Muslims, they try to get rich quick. That's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. And you can't do that in accordance with Islamic finance, because you'll be speculating. There'd be a lot of, for example, forex trading. There's a lot of speculation there. There's a lot of gharar, uncertainty. And there's probably even riba, because you're using borrowed funds often to make an FX profit. So just foreign currency trading and cryptocurrency trading, these are all potentially haram. I'm not saying they are haram. They have very significant potential to be haram, as opposed to buying a house or a stock market or something like that, which has lower risk. It still can be haram, but the risk is lower. So I would say avoid the big get-rich-quick schemes and focus on slowly building wealth, growing it over time, and letting the power of compounding kick in. Compounding is when something that comes from the money you've earned from an investment, and that also then grows your wealth. For example, if I bought one house and then sold it for a profit, if I reinvested that profit in a bigger house, I would compound my wealth, because that additional profit that I made would grow itself, and I would have a bigger house and it would just keep growing. So I'd go from a very small 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, then from 2-bedroom to 8-bedroom, because of the power of compounding. So compounding is something that Muslims don't understand very well, and I'd flag that to them. I'd also think Muslims should also think about pensions. Think about your tax efficiency. How can you structure your investments in a Sharia compliant way, but also in a dunya compliant way, to make it so that you're giving less to the taxman in accordance with your legal duties. Now, an ISA scheme is very important. Investing, the government gives you a limit of 20k to invest in equities and cash accounts and stuff like that. And if you use that effectively, you can generate massive amounts of wealth.
But the cash one wouldn't be allowed because it's pure interest.
You can get cash ISAs that are Islamic and Sharia compliant.
Okay.
Gatehouse do a cash
okay,
ISA,
right.
4.7%.
So how does it work? What do they buy gold in exchange?
No, so they would basically, you'd open a savings account with them, and it would have an ISA wrapper, so called an ISA.
Yeah.
ISA just means it gets special tax treatment.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
You've got your account. They would then loan the money that you give them. Let's say you give 20k they would pool in loads of money and give it to people who want to buy homes. and then those people who bought the homes, Muslim community, are then paying that profit back to the Muslim community.
Okay,
So
right.
it's all linked to real assets. It's not fake. It's not a system of, it's not a stack of cards of riba and usury. It's real assets that are generating real wealth for not only the account holder, but also for the person who has a house after his mortgage or his Sharia compliant mortgage ends.
Brilliant.
I know just from speaking to people within the community,
Yeah.
a lot of them do not, for their own reason, they don't trust, or probably because of lack of understanding,
Yeah.
they don't trust or understand how these Islamic mortgages work
Mm-hmm.
when buying property. So they think that they just need to work all their life until they can buy a house for cash. That's not practical, as you know. As house prices increasing, I live in in an area where the average house price is £250,000. On an average wage, you would have to, save all your wage for 10 years to be able to buy a house cash. So, just to educate the viewers on how these Islamic mortgages work, just so they can open their minds to be more flexible on them. Do you want to just touch upon that as well?
I will, yeah, and this is a very important topic. I think that being in the market is better than being out of the market. Having a property is better than not having a property, because you're paying rent and you're losing all that wealth. The Ummah is losing all that wealth that you have. The zakat system is losing. Everybody's losing. No one benefits except the landlord. So I would advise that you look at these Sharia compliant mortgages that are actually given a bad name for unnecessary reasons. Like, fine, they might be 3K more expensive to get the loan with legal costs or whatever, but really 3K is better than not having a property. Like, people always look at the upfront cost of Sharia finance and not at the big picture. The big picture is to create a Muslim economy, and we have to suffer a little bit to create the economy, to get it going. And actually nowadays, because of the interest rates being so high, Sharia compliant facilities are actually around about the same. So you don't even have an excuse anymore. And I think what confuses people is the legal structuring that the lawyers have to do to make the system work is a bit of a pain. Like, it's a pain for me to explain it, but I'll try. Essentially, if you want to buy a house, the bank buys that house. The bank then leases that house to you for a certain period of time. And your rent then pays off that mortgage that you got, that Sharia compliant loan. And at the end of it, you buy it back from the bank. So from a legal perspective, there's 3 transfers: seller to the bank to you, the lease, and then lease back to the customer at the end. Sale back to the customer from the bank at the end of it. So there's a lot going on. It's not just like borrowing money from a bank and then selling your property after it's done, or it's not very simple. But at the end of the day, the structure isn't that complicated. You're all very intelligent. You can use TikTok well. You can use Instagram well. So listen, my name's Aziz Deen. You can go on my LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer any legal questions you might have. I'm happy to be of any legal assistance whatsoever, actually, because I feel that we need more people in the community that are giving back and educating people.
We've just come up to half an hour in the middle of our podcast, and I'd like to request our audience to act upon what Brother Aziz said earlier, where he said set up a regular donation. Alhamdulillah, we at Guidance Hub are trying to educate here. We have classes, we teach the Quran, we teach the Deen, we have activities, we engage the community, we call people to Islam in a friendly, merciful way. You can support us if you click on the link in the comments or in the video description. It's a regular donation of £10 a month. It's the blessed month of Rabiul Awwal we've just entered, the first few days of Rabiul Awwal, the first night for some people. So please make that intention. Please click on the link and set up your £10 donation. And that will enable us to continue to grow this work and help us serve the community and beyond, inshallah ta'ala.
I personally, just carrying on from that, I actually personally have realised and experienced the benefits of just
A regular charity, yeah.
Just when I got promoted to a certain position, and I was at an event, and they were raising money for charity, and I think it was to sponsor an offer for, I think the amount was about £100, £150 a month.
Sure.
And I just felt like I was hesitant. I don't know why I was so hesitant.
Yeah.
I thought to
It's always
myself,
hard at the
it's just a
beginning.
shaitan just
Yeah,
kicking
yeah.
into my mind. It happens to all of us. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're bad people. It doesn't mean we're bad Muslims.
You're right.
It's an
normal.
automatic reaction
It's normal.
in our minds. And I just thought to myself, kicked that out of my head, and thought, for the sake of Allah, if I, with the right intention, if I commit to that donation, number one, I'll be providing some orphans with a better life, and inshallah, I'll reap the rewards for that. Inshallah, I will generate more wealth from that myself. And I had to make I was waiting on a certain business deal that was going through, and I went ahead with the charitable donation, and literally a few weeks down the line, I didn't think the deal was going through, but alhamdulillah, it ended up going through, and
Subhanallah.
I've from
You
that
attribute it
experience,
to that.
yeah,
that
from that experience, I've applied that many times in many other occasions. And
No, and I would like to again emphasize the point that you mentioned this first. That I've heard that, I've experienced that on many occasions from many different people. I actually remember once, it's a very personal story, but in Ramadan, I think it was 2009. I think it was Ramadan 2009 or 2009, and I was in Damascus. And I didn't have any wealth. I was sponsored. I'd, used all my wealth.
I know this story.
You know this story, okay?
Beautiful story.
Yeah. So I'm summarizing it, but Suleiman said the longer version, mashallah. So in the beginning of Ramadan, a Syrian man, it was after Jummah, the first Jummah of Ramadan, he came over to me, and alhamdulillah, look how generous the people were. He gave me 2,000 liras, which is 20 quid. He gave me 20 quid as a act of charity. He said to you, he knew me. He knew I was a student. I'd come there to study for Islam, and I was there with my wife and son at the time. So it was beginning of Ramadan, and I felt like, I want to share this with somebody. I didn't just take the 20 pounds or 2,000 liras, Syrian liras, and put it in my pocket. So I found a brother, and I said, this man just gave it for you and me. So I didn't say it's from me. I said, he gave it for you and me. So he's not going to say no. He's always given it, mashallah. So he took it. But I gave it him. It was from me because it was my 2,000 liras, right? But I gave it to him. And my intention was just to share with somebody. That was the few days into Ramadan. On the 27th night of Ramadan, I went to the masjid for Taraweeh and everything. And a man came and put 10,000 liras into my hand. 100 pounds, basically. And I didn't even have a thought that I was going to get any money tonight. I went to pray. I went to, the 27th night of Ramadan. Somebody's giving me 100 pounds, 10 times what I gave at the beginning. So, this idea of 10 times, I've literally experienced that in my life. It happens. And like you're saying, Salman, you giving charity, Allah opens doors, removes difficulties. We know the hadith that giving charity pushes away harm. So, like you said, invest in your dunya and your akhirah in giving some of your wealth. Allah doesn't say give all of it, give 90% of it, give 70%. It's just a few percent. Wherever you're comfortable with it, the more you give, the more blessings you'll receive.
The Quran itself, I did an English review of the Quran, so I read it in English this Ramadan. I was in Itqaf as well, and I spent a lot of focus on understanding the meaning. And the Quran frequently, Allah in the Quran frequently says, and give to God a goodly loan. Loaning your money, giving your money. Debt forgiveness is such an important thing in Islam. Like if somebody owes you a debt and they can't repay it, forgive it. I've got a really good friend, mashallah. He recently forgave a debt that was owed by a deceased person. So our donations don't have to just be to charities. We should look for opportunities in our own community because charity begins at home.
No, definitely. I think that's probably the secret, that sometimes we forget about looking around us and who's in need and having these conversations, because we've become globalized, internet based. Everyone's looking for like something on their phone to click at, and there's somebody living next door to you that doesn't need clicks or anything. It's just being human and neighborly and just asking about them. So definitely agree. But that's the thing. This is part of Islamic finance, and this is what the podcast is. Giving to other people is about yourself. It's Allah is more generous than we can imagine. So you giving would, for the sake of Allah, Allah is going to give you much more back in return. That's the best investment. Yeah.
Look, Islamic finance is also touches on not just our personal transactions but also in business. So I'm very, very passionate about promoting Muslim entrepreneurship. I think it's something we need to talk about. So Sheikh, what does Islam say about us Muslims conducting ourselves in business and entrepreneurship?
So first of all, the concept of tijara, which is commerce and business, was the main form of work and income in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He himself was a tajir, a merchant, right? Sayyidina Abu Bakr was a merchant. Sayyidina Uthman, one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba. Sayyidina Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the 10 promised paradise. So commerce was, entrepreneurship is what we call it today, right? But the idea of business, buying and selling commodities, which is, like I mentioned earlier, changed over the time. But it was a big thing. But the Islamic perspective of it was, this is a hadith actually, the truthful merchant If you're truthful in what you say and how you interact and the money you earn is with the Anbiya, has a rank of, or has the reward of, you can't give the rank exactly, but you have the companionship in the akhirah of the prophets, right? The best income you have is the income that is from truthfulness and being honest with people. And in the olden days, like I said, there was so much commerce. We now get upset, for instance, right, when somebody opens the same type of business as us. We've got a takeaway. They open takeaway opposite the road. I opened a car showroom. Somebody opens a car showroom up the road. I open a travel agent. Somebody opens a travel agent across the road. We get upset. Think was taking my risk. Is competing with me. In the Muslim world, go and see it now. Even right, always been the case. People open shops together. One cloth merchant, another cloth merchant, another cloth merchant, another cloth merchant, and they all helped each other. It wasn't a competition. It was a means of earning a living, and they did well. They became wealthy. Mashallah. And some of them, if the other one wasn't making as much money, he would say, I'm closed for today. And he'd close and he'd let the others make money. So it wasn't a case of we've got to, compete to put others down or, outdo others. It was a case of we can make money, we can, be truthful. And they made plenty of money, mashallah. We mentioned some of the wealthiest Sahaba just earlier. So there was a real sense of communal, like I said earlier, that it's not just about me and making money, which is this selfish attitude, individualistic world we live in, unfortunately. And I think we need to bring back this kind of discourse about community. The law is for the community. The work we do should be for our families first and foremost, but neighbors, extended family, our communities, giving charity is all about that. That's what Islam encourages. We've got to look at this whole life as a journey together and not a journey alone. It's a bit lonely to think just you and just I'm here. No, you're with the community. You want to share your life, you want to share your joy, you want to share your business, you want to share your skills. People in Muslims like Aziz, mashallah, who are into finance and Islamic law or law, and then obviously helping with this is why, alhamdulillah, we did this today, so that you, the audience out there, everybody could benefit and take that knowledge and feel confidence. I actually feel like investing right now. Like I'm not got much to invest, alhamdulillah. But you know what, I'm really thinking that where can I now sort of put some money. Yeah. Looking at different investment funds and what I can do with the money. Yeah, but it's important, like, because if you just put your money in, like, let's say the most common, famous, I don't know what the Aussies would have told us, right? What comes on the TV, like, I don't know, the post office investment or something, right? You don't know what they're doing with your money. Like you said, they could be using it in companies that are all sorts of debts on riba-based debts, or, dealing in haram commodities and so forth. So, alhamdulillah, getting that guidance, say, look, you've got to invest, you should invest, it's a good thing. It's better than your wealth just sitting there doing nothing. Investment is better, no, agreed. But where and how, that's really important. So yeah, the entrepreneurship, I think, is really important. I think a lot of a lot of ladies are now at home, Muslim ladies, they're trying a little project, whether it's baking the cakes or doing some kind of arts and crafts. And I think this is something we need to help them with. Yeah, definitely. Maybe Aziz can elaborate more on the entrepreneurship and advice in that regard.
So entrepreneurship is about managing risk. It starts with understanding what the risks are. First of all, I think lawyers, accountants, people basically that have knowledge should be giving a lot more back to the community, because before you even start a business, you should be thinking about tax treatment, how you're going to structure it in a company as a sole trader. Mashwara, our religion teaches us to seek advice from the people who know. Mm-hmm. And any person of learning, of knowledge, whether it be law or finance or whatever, who doesn't give mashwara, who doesn't join in mashwara, I think they're neglecting their duties, because God has given them a certain risk of intelligence, a proportion of intelligence, and they have an obligation for that intelligence. They have to, inshallah, I think there should be a requirement, if there isn't one, to spread deen and also to spread the dunya elements as well to empower the community. So is there such a thing actually?
Yeah, no, so I was just on that very point. We used to hear from our teachers, like personally, in terms of our knowledge or our learning, they say your zakat of your knowledge is to teach it. You can't just hold on to it because you've learned something, right? So same, I think it applies to all sciences. If you have some good to offer people, it's a form of zakat, charity basically, to give that and share that with us. But we have become very sort of, capitalistic and materialistic, where we want a fee for every advice we give. Or my expertise.
I'm against that.
You obviously that's your job and your career, and you get paid for it, but you've got to give some time for the sake of Allah, for the benefit of the
Yeah.
community. You know, what we're asking for is probably like 1% of
Yeah,
your time,
yeah, honestly.
not like 10, 20%, all that. But people are not even willing to give that, not even to budge. So we need to open our hearts and minds up a bit
I
more,
really like this.
you know,
I've
and-
never heard it
and
put
give
like
our
this.
give our charity on our actual skills and
Yeah.
knowledge and experience to help others,
Yeah.
empower others. Yeah.
You're right. Like a quick question. It's not taxing anyone. It's 1%, like you say, of a person's times. We don't realize how much time we have in a day. If we were structured, actually, Mufti Faraz Adam, he's a scholar who's very, very good at Islamic finance. He's based in England. He structures his day very meticulously. He's up at a certain time. He reads. You know, I think structure is really important. Use your time wisely. Don't waste it surfing the internet. I'm a victim. I'm a victim of the internet. I spend at least an hour a day on Instagram probably. I'm trying to change that. But I need to change that. By changing that, I need to put a structure in place. You need to replace one thing with another. So maybe it could be, if you want to be an entrepreneur, firstly submit to God, because all risk comes from God. The second element is research. So know your knowledge very well. Know your risk. Don't speculate. Know your market. Know how to do it. 3, use the Muslim network, because subhanAllah, I have used it in my career and I have never had any regrets. Alhamdulillah, because our people innately are supportive. If a Muslim is pure, he will not have hasad, he won't have envy. He will want to uplift others. And even sometimes there are cases where if I promote another Muslim, it'll be impactful for my business. For example, a competitor law firm. But I'll do that if that person is good. Because as a Muslim, if someone is good and asks for my opinion, I shouldn't lie. I should just be honest. And actually, I think Muslim business is inherently good. But nowadays, Sheikh, you may be able to agree with me, I would be worried about going to a Muslim builder. I would be worried about going to a Muslim plumber. I'd be worried about going to a Muslim accountant, because you just don't know what kind of service you're going to get anymore, because we've lost our connection to the rules of our faith.
No, unfortunately, I think that sort of integrity and competency in doing our jobs and in the best of ways for our customer. Unfortunately, you know, I've been a victim of this as well, and I think cars are important. You know, like your cars going
Used
to repair,
cars as well.
and you know, you have something's wrong, and they'll tell you need to spend £300 to fix it, and somebody else will tell you I could have done that for 50 quid. You're like, wait a minute, what's just happened? And
Yeah.
it's an embarrassment, you know.
Yeah.
It would.
No, it's happened
you
to
know,
me.
Yeah, it's this kind of thing, and it's Muslim mechanics, Muslim, you know, whatever. Not particularly that profession I want to
Yeah.
have a go at or anything.
It's
I'm just
ev-
saying it's just generally
Business in general.
and it's not like everyone. It's maybe 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
But it is getting, like you said, it is becoming more common.
Yeah.
And it's very sad to see this, that we've become distant from our morality,
Yeah.
from fear of God, from
Yeah.
just wanting to help others, and it's just become like, you know, let's just suck the blood out of everybody.
Yeah.
It's a really ruthless attitude, which is the capitalist
Yeah.
commercial.
It's what it's done
with
to
the
us.
society we live in.
Yeah.
It's influences now. It's impacted our perspective of life, our kind of worldview, and we need to kind of counteract that in finance, in the world of finance.
I'm going to be honest, you know, I think in the UK we're doing some things really well. For example, there are some Muslim countries that you go to, you get harassed, you get scammed, you can't trust the water bill because it's been tampered with. You know, as a whole, we're doing good. And I think a lot of Muslims are where we jump to pessimism too quickly. We're very good. Most Muslims, you can trust them and they're amazing people. But we are seeing globally an issue with people not understanding the Islamic finance and Islamic rules on trade and business. And you know, fine, a lot of people would use the excuse, oh, we need to survive, so we're doing what we can. That's so wrong, because Sheikh, all of our wealth, all of our food, all our provision, it comes from the one and only. And Islamic finance, it should be repeating this again and again and again, that our wealth is not ours, it comes from God, it's an amana on us, and we pay our zakat because of this amana. And also, in the end, hopefully, you know, it's going to go with us. Our wealth will not come with us to the next life, but waqf, Sadaqah Jariyah will, building guidance hub, building mosques. You know, for example, £10 donated today into the guidance hub model would have multiple benefits, because you're putting in place an infrastructure. You're the founding brick of what could become in 100 years' time the next Al-Azhar for the Muslim community. You know, like that's the thing. Well, let's think big and let's not just think small.
I think let's start concluding the podcast now, and I want to finish off with some practical,
Sure.
with some real practical examples that the viewers can take home.
Mhm.
I think just to summarize what we've even discussed first.
Yeah.
Number 1, change of mindset. Be more open-minded,
Agreed.
and in order to do that, you need to educate yourself.
Agreed.
Now, I know I've studied here, done the Islamic studies, we've got Islamic finance as one of the modules, don't we? On one of the courses here. Do you want to touch very quickly on that?
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks you to Brother Aziz for coming all this way. I'm really appreciative. We're really
Alhamdulillah.
thankful
My
for
real
all your
pleasure.
time and efforts and contribution. But
Alhamdulillah.
on that side, yeah, just a little bit of encouragement to learn about Islamic studies in general. I think we all need to learn, and knowledge is such a powerful element in our life. Look at people who've gone to get degrees and educate themselves and training, and in life people are doing CPD, and the development is continuous. Islam really is all about that. It encourages that knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Learning is what is going to make us better people, understand our faith, understand our society, and work in a better way, become better people in terms of our morals and values. So really, when it comes to Islamic finance, people are in the world of finance, of transactions, and some people just don't know. They're good-hearted people. Like you
Yeah,
said,
they
we
just
know
don't know.
we're good people, mashallah, but some people just don't know. And I've come across this. You'll speak to them, and they'll eventually find out, and they're like, I didn't know. Do I have to get rid of my house now? Do I? And I'm sure you've come across
Yeah,
this
all the time on LinkedIn,
yeah,
all the
This
time.
is it. So they ask you, because look, it's beautiful in a sense,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
look at their concern
Yeah,
for their akhirah. Look at their concern for pleasing Allah,
yeah,
or not displeasing Him and incurring His wrath
yeah.
with these kind of haram things or whatever, or problems they've come across. So really, the solution, prevention before cure, isn't it?
I like.
Learn your deen, learn your prayers, learn your fasting. We all learn, but learn about Islamic finance, learn about what is right, what is wrong. Speak to solicitors,
Yep.
speak to people in the field. There's
Yeah.
specialist muftis in finance. Take your time out, honor their time. If there's fees, pay the fees. But look, it's about learning. You come to courses on the basics. So our courses are very
Yeah.
basic as well, by the way. So if you want to just start, get your foot in the door and just figure out how is a contract made in Islam, what is the conditions, or what is conditions are not allowed in a contract, how a contract becomes what they say fasid, what riba is, what kind of different types of contract we have, in terms of lease and hire, in terms of you're selling, you can exchange a commodity for a commodity. How does that work? who has rights over what? Usually it's cash and commodity. How do you buy on debt? You can. You
Yeah.
can have credit in Islam. There's nothing wrong
It's
with
very
that.
normal.
Yeah. So and how does that work, and so on and so forth. I will finish with one little point though.
Yeah.
In my studies, and I studied the Islamic finance models from the books of the Hanafi fiqh, I found something that maybe you can comment on, Aziz, that the concept of debts and loans, let's say you give somebody a loan, they didn't go beyond 3 years. That the longest loan period that the books discuss, they didn't go beyond the term of 3, because that was the time everybody
Right.
expected you to pay back within.
Yeah.
Like they were 12 months, 6 months, 18
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
But the longest period that's ever mentioned in historically is 3 years.
I love
don't
it.
know. I don't know. Is there wisdom in that, or is there,
So I've never heard this,
Yeah.
but I actually immediately know the reason why.
Okay,
So when you have a loan, are you or are you not indebted to somebody?
you are indeed.
And as a human being, is it consistent with Islam to be indebted to another human, to owe them such an obligation? It's against what Islam teaches us to do. We should not have some sort of slavery type condition where a person has rights over you. Allah is the only one, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the only one who should have rights over us. So perhaps that was the rationale behind it, that loans couldn't extend beyond a certain period because, like for example, if you're constantly worried about paying your mortgage, does the bank not own your brain, not your heart? That's what puts a lot of people off of Islamic finance. But I feel like you also need to remember that whatever wealth we have, it does come from God. And I always go back to it again and again, because if you want a house, ask Allah for a house and then research mortgages. Don't just go straight into it. And, we have to remember that everything comes from God and He gives us everything. And actually, good news, it's prophesied that as we get closer to Qiyamah, we'll become richer. So inshallah, if that is the case, then Muslim Ummah will be very wealthy. And you can see it actually. Go to Saudi Arabia. 70 years ago, there would have been, 3 or 4 oil wells. Now the whole economy is buying golf, it's buying football, it's buying, Muslims now have serious capital. But what don't we have, Sheikh? We don't have unity. Other people have unity, the common goals, common ideals. And all of our Muslim capital out there, it seems to be split and spread. And we discuss and we debate Brilvi, Deobandi, Sunni, Shia. And actually, if we just focused on, from a commercial perspective, the rules inherent to Muslims that we can all agree on, maybe the Muslim population would be its theoretical 2 billion, you know, because at the moment we're not, we say we're 2 billion, but really are we? You know, Muslims from Iran won't sit in a room with Muslims from Pakistan. You know, we have so much divisions within us. And my question is, was that created by capitalism to undermine the Muslim world? Because our religion teaches unity.
And I think we're responsible for that to some degree. We can't push the blame on others. I think there was colonization has its impact over many decades and centuries. But yeah, I think that we can easily rectify that if we were willing to, right? So the solutions are there. I think it's a case of, I liked what you said, and I think that is a really important point. Ask Allah if you want something and then go and do it. You know, that's really what it's about. You know, it's not going to happen if Allah doesn't want it to happen for you. And even if it doesn't happen, at least you asked Allah, and Allah, you know, gave you whatever else in return. So the dua is going to bring you benefit,
Agreed.
whatever the outcome of your efforts are.
And that actually is seeking Allah's pleasure. Like just how you think, so you know, we think salah is a means of worship. People forget that even asking a dua is a means of worship. Islam means to supplicate. And as soon as you supplicate to your God, either in prayer or either in just, my Lord, you are the only being that can give me any success in life. Oh Lord, please bestow your favors upon me. Is that not the purest supplication, you know, after salah itself? Inshallah. May Allah bless you all for putting on this podcast. May Allah bless the viewers out there for listening. And again, my name's Aziz Deen. Happy to answer questions. Brother here, Sulaiman, mashallah, you're doing amazing work. It was great of you to reach out. And I never for a second expected to see such an amazing professional setup. A whole property, mashallah, dedicated for spreading the deen of Islam with functions going on. Manchester is really a lively place, and I really have missed being here.
May Allah accept all our efforts.
Ameen.
And I think the one takeaway message is ask for Allah's help.
Inshallah.
And may Allah make it easy for all of us.
Yeah.
It's difficult out there in the economic climate that we live in.
Yeah.
It's constantly getting more and more difficult. The pressures are hard to live with, and we just have to educate ourselves. And we have to remember, you know, Allah is in control of our lives, essentially.
I want to end just on one slight point. So property prices are not going to be high forever. So just look at the gap between how much years worth of earnings would buy a house. That's a really big gap right now. The massive divide. It used to be 4 years or 3 years. Now it's like 8 or 9 years as an average. That will come down as money gets more expensive to borrow. Then the price of assets come down because less people are buying them. If loads of people can get 1% mortgages, the rich people are going to buy 7, 8, 9, 10 houses, right? Because money has no value. It's so cheap. They're getting higher. House prices, inshallah, with God's will, they will come down and stabilize. And inshallah, don't worry, don't despair, don't rush either to buy things. Make your decisions with discussion with legal advisors and relevant specialists. Cheers.
So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to Aziz for coming down. Sulaiman posting. I think we just want to say the final words, and that is Assalamu alaikum
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.